All right, so we're back here in Florida, and I want to break down a concept or an idea, something to think about when it comes to hourly candles, 15-minute candles, looking at the higher time frames. When those candles close, I want to imagine what could possibly happen next, or what should happen. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about what should happen once this hourly candle or 15-minute candle closes. Looking up the hourly chart here on the NASDAQ, and what we want to talk about here is basically looking at these candles, right? As these candles open and where they close at, are we in the previous range of the previous candle? Are we at the bottom of the previous candle? Are we at the high of the previous candle, and vice versa? So you can see almost every time that we open, like this little candle right here closed right there at the 448s, and then it opened right here at the 447s. There was a very small little dip down, kind of like back into the body, right? So like this is the body of the candle, the body's there. We opened right there. We have a little bit of a pullback, so a little bit of a pullback into this candle. So very rarely do I see like these very large candles, not have a little bit of a test kind of below the level that they opened at. Like very rarely do you see these hourly candles with no wicks either on the bottom or the top, like very, very rarely. So remember, we're looking at the hourly chart. So those wicks can be pretty big moves. Like this right here, 430 down to the 400. That's about a 30-point pullback on that move. So what we want to think about is as these candles are closing, is it's like, okay, are we at the high of the previous candle? So right now this candle's opening, right? We're at kind of the high of this is like the previous high of this little candle right there. And then that's kind of opening and pushing up. But we're also thinking that there's a good chance that we kind of retest, the middle, kind of pulling back into the middle of that previous candle. And here's a good example too. So the other day we were actually watching this live on YouTube. And as this candle right here, this big candle sells off, it sells. We get a little bit of a pushback up here on this wick. And then the next candle, I'm sitting there and I'm watching it and I'm like, all right, if you look at this, like the candle opens, it opens right here at the low, right? The low of this previous candle. It's opening right there. We have a wick, and you're thinking that there's almost, I don't want to say 100% chance, but there's a very, very good chance that when this candle opens, that there is going to be a little bit of a push back up, right? We're going to get a little bit of a push back up, get a wick on the top of that candle, and then we can get the sell down. So what I was really focused on here on this trade or this setup was I wanted to get short. I wanted to get short as this next candle was opening, but I was also thinking to myself like, hey, looking at the hourly chart here, I can see that there's a good chance that we might, if we're opening like right here at the close of this previous candle, there's going to be a little bit of like a little push up, and then we get that move down. So I'm trying to like imagine, right? I'm trying to imagine where this candle is going to kind of like paint a picture, because is it like, what are the chances that this hourly candle right here opens and it's just magically just like continuing lower without any type of like a repush, retest kind of this hourly candle here? So, does it always work out perfectly? Like, is it an end all be all type of idea? No, but I think it's something to be aware of, right? If we're opening up at the close of the previous candle, we're right there. It's like, okay, what is going on with this price action? If I want to get short, should I wait for a little bit of a retest here on this hourly candle and then get that move down? Because you can see here, that's about a 30-40 point move back up on that retest. And then we sold down and took out that kind of low down there. So you can see very often these candles, I mean, there's like, a little tiny wick. It's almost like there's always like a little tiny wick. This is another good example. This candle right here closes at the 430. This next candle opens right there, and you get a little bit of a wick, and then you get that sell down. I just kind of want to see, these big hourly candles. If I'm looking for, good price action, if the market's moving well, there's a pretty good chance that we get, a 25 to 50%, a 25 to 50% kind of pullback into that hourly candle, kind of pushing back up, and then look, we kind of pull back. So if you see those really, really big hourly candles kind of printing on the chart, you're thinking to yourself like, okay, there's a good chance we probably retest. And here it's like overnight move type action where it's like we still, even when we open here, it was a little wick to the downside. We kind of then push back up. So watching that hourly chart to kind of see that little wick down, that very small wick on the bottom of that candle. It's hard to draw it, but very, very small wick. And look, we kind of pull back, and then it's like 25, 50, 75, and then 100% of that body for the pullback. So almost about a 25% pullback. And it gives you a good overall risk reward, because now you're looking at like, okay, there's a wick right there on the hourly candle. If we push up here, kind of my risk is at the bottom of that hourly wick. Same thing here. You know, we opened up, or we closed right there at the 430s. We opened up right here at the 430s. Look, we retested there about 25% on that hourly chart, and then kind of a bull flag on the hourly chart, kind of playing out, pulling back kind of into this previous area. But again, we're looking to see like where those wicks are, where, you know, the overall momentum is. When we see those big wicks to the downside, like this candle here, big wick, big move, right? Big move to the downside there. But look, we had a wick on the bottom, and then that kind of wick right back up there to retest, and then kind of the continuation of the downside. So I really kind of am just trying to be aware of what is going on when I'm looking at the hourly chart in terms of those wicks and where those wicks are. What is that body of that candle doing? You know, that huge sell down, there's a good chance maybe we get a little bit of a wick kind of up here into this like 25%. I mean, that's about 25% of the body of that 1 hour candle. Also, 15-minute chart, kind of the same theory, right? If we're looking at the 15-minute chart, very often we kind of get a little bit of a retest. You know, here, 15-minute kind of breaks out to the upside. Look, we retest, there's a wick right there. We then push back up. So I really kind of want to be aware on these bigger time frames, kind of what are the wicks doing and what is the overall kind of setup. Even here, we kind of break the downside, a little bit of a wick kind of back up there. Look, kind of right there, closes, a little bit of a wick, and then they slam it down. So again, you can see 15-minute chart, that big sell down right here. What do? We kind of retrace into the into the middle of that 15-minute candle. So this is our 15-minute range opening up. We push back up into the middle. That becomes resistance there later on as well. And just kind of being aware, looking at these candlesticks, like, okay, you know, I think almost, you know, anytime you get like these like big, just kind of bull candlesticks like this, there's a very good chance that we kind of are going to retrace a little bit. You know, if we're going to head higher, then there's kind of like, there's some retracement there. But I think this is more like when stuff's happening, people are getting trapped when you get these kind of price action moves where it's like kind of rips back up and then just sells right back down. These are the shorts, you know, off that double bottom who are covering down there. Some buyers stepping in, thinking it's going to pop, and then they get slammed. It just kind of moves on down there. So the 15-minute chart, again, just kind of being very aware of where these candles are closing. Here's a good example. We got the first 15-minute candle of the day. We sold all the way down here. So if I'm sitting here and I'm like, okay, this candle right here opens. It opens right at 245, which was the close of this previous candle. There's a wick to the top, so we know we kind of push back up. Again, you know, about 25, 15, that's like about 15% right there. A little bit of a retracement. Then we take out that low, and then look what happens. We then rip back up. You can see the wick here on this 15-minute candle. This wick kind of drops below this one and then pushes back up. Just kind of spitballing here. We're just talking about kind of what I've been looking at with these bigger time frames and really focusing on the idea like, hey, you know, the big time frame is really delivering us to where we're going, right? We're looking at the bigger time frame for the market to take us where we're headed. The smaller time frame makes up these bigger candles. You know, if you're trading the 2-minute chart, the 1-minute chart, you know, those candles obviously are going to be building up the hourly candle. They're building up that 15-minute candle. So the bigger picture is where we're going. The smaller picture is telling the story of how we got there. So think about it like that. If I'm looking at the chart and I'm thinking, okay, the market really looks like it wants to fill this gap, or the market really looks like it wants to push up to the highs, or vice versa. You know, if the market on the hourly chart is showing me that there's a very good chance, okay, we're pushing up, we break out here on the hourly chart, I can see kind of the idea that we would push up into the middle of this hourly candle. All right, so if I'm looking at the smaller time frames, I'm trading this based off of what this bigger time frame is telling me, what that bigger push is telling me there, and that's what we're focusing on. We're focusing on kind of, is there a overall pattern on that bigger time frame? Are we able to execute that on the smaller time frames by entering and exiting, knowing that like, hey, the market wants to push up. Okay, we're watching it. We see the setup. That's what we're watching. But then I'm focusing on that, you know, bigger time frame to be like, hey, you know, maybe I don't want to get short you know, maybe I don't want to get short right here at the low of this candle because I'm looking at it on the hourly chart. I'm like, hey, you know, maybe this thing's going to pop back up, kind of retest that 25, 50% back up there before moving down. Even though I'm thinking that it's going to be a short, I'm still like, hey, maybe I don't want to short at the bottom. I want this picture to kind of play out a little bit better because I know that, like, hey, this big candle down, there's a chance that we're going to get some retracement. And then I can look for my setup. I don't want to just be like, hey, let me just jump in because the 2-minute chart looks, you know, like it's time to go lower. Just focusing on that bigger time frame, looking at the candlesticks, seeing what's going on with the body of those candlesticks, seeing where those wicks are. You know, like, you know how the market moves. The market kind of pushes up, makes flags, pulls back. There's a wave, you know, the market's pushing. You can see these patterns, but you want to kind of look at the bigger time frame to kind of see if it's going to play out with the bigger time frame pattern. I'm looking at it like, hey, if there's a bull flag on the hourly chart, well, I don't want to be getting short. If I'm looking at this, you know, like, hey, this is looking pretty good on the bigger time frames to push up. I'm trying to figure out what is going on, you know, with the bigger time frame, and then entering my trades there on the smaller time frame. So there it is. We're back in Florida. We got the live stream coming this week every day, 9 a.m. Tune in Eastern. We'll be here watching it, waiting for those candlesticks to close, waiting for those wicks to move, making some money. I'll see you all live right here. Let's go.